Hello and welcome back. And I know in my last video, if you were watching the series, you'll notice that I said that we were going to work on particles, and I would love to work on particles, but we have no fire. So, in this video, we're going to make ourselves a fireplace to put some fire in. So, let's start with a part. And the idea here is we're going to make a few logs, and then we're going to spruce it up a little and add a bed of coals and ashes. So the first order of the day is to make these logs here. So let's go for one. It's a good size, decent size log. And we'll change it to be black and slate. And of course a cylinder. There we go. That's looking more like a log we'd have in a fire. So let's set that one there. And I'm going to rotate it a little. And a quick side note on the rotation and movement tools. Here's an example. You can see the move tool here is currently oriented to world space. So right now it's along the X, Y, and Z axis. But if I go Control L, it'll move it to local space, or whatever the basically whatever the orientation of the part is. And so this can be useful depending on how you're moving stuff. You may want to switch between these two. So let's go. So here's an example. I can move this up, but let's say I want to keep this log right here. I just want to move it down that way. I can go Control L, and then I can move it along the axis like so without doing anything else. Makes it nice for positioning some stuff. Let's change the size here. Movement scaling. Make sure we use perfecto. Get it just touching there. Maybe one more. There we go. Duplicate it. We'll add one more log. And if I wanted to, let's do this. Let's change the size of this. And I'm going to change the rotation to half of 15 so we can get a little finer. You'll see we have more lines here. We get finer rotation. This is pretty good how it is. Just move it. Oops, not. There we go. That's looking nice. Let's maybe. No, I like it out like that. That's good. Okay, so we got our fireplace there. Pull it in there. Perfect. So we got some general logs set up, but now it looks a little odd with just the logs lying there. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to introduce you to some very useful objects that you don't use very often necessarily, but there are times like this when they're very useful. First one is, just change this to one by one by one. There we go. So if you go insert, right click, insert object, you'll notice these. There's a cylinder mesh, there's a block mesh, and a special mesh. On the block mesh, simply this, but the big thing about these is you can change the scale. So if we had a part that's very small, or let's say it's tall but we want it to be very skinny, we can insert a block mesh and change the scale to, half of what it is. So right now the part itself is 0.2 studs wide, but our mesh is scaling that to half, so it's only showing up as 0.1 studs in thickness. So this can be useful for like making thin sheets of paper or small posts like this. The other one is a cylinder mesh, and simply a cylinder, and it has it's pretty much the same. The big thing is also scaling with this. But the one we're going to be using today is this special mesh. And the reason is that we need it to be a sphere. And you'll notice there are a bunch of different, there's like a brick, cylinder 2, file mesh would be a mesh that someone's uploaded, or one of the Roblox meshes. Head, so if we make it, you'll notice this looks very much like your character's head, and that's what they use, is this mesh. And there are a few other things. There's a sphere, and this is what we want. Torso, which I've never used, and a wedge as well. So let's go back to the sphere. This is the one we want. And normally if you have a part that's a sphere or a bowl, you can only, it has to stay that shape. But with this mesh, we can actually stretch it. And we're going to use this down on the ground here. I'm going to move it in. So I'm basically positioning it halfway here so that it touches right there. And what we can use this for is to make a bit of an ash bed from previous fires. So I'll just duplicate it, do that, and then change these to like concrete and a little darker. Actually, I want them slightly lighter. There we go. So now we've got some ashes here. I'm going to duplicate this one more time. And move it. I'm just going to resize it so that it still stays somewhat down. And this one, we're going to make it neon. So it's bright and orange. So we're going to add, there we go. So now we got some coals in there. That's looking nice. So we got some coals, we got our wood, and I think this should now be ready for some particles. So in our next video, we're going to add some fire to this fire here. See you then.